Hello friends, this is Fox Nival Studios. Today we are here with new chapter What if Naruto was the leader of Lord's Demon. So before starting story, please subscribe our channel. Now let's begin the story. You're suggesting that I send my eldest daughter into the hands of a demon? Hiashi roared, his fists coming down on the table, cracking the wood beneath them. This is an outrage. She's to be my heir. You have another daughter, the Hyuga elder before him said, and from what we have seen, the younger child is the better child. Hinata does not meet the requirements to be the next clan head in your place. He is correct, said another elder, or would you rather have the caged bird seal placed on one of them? Hiashi growled as he nursed his bruised hands. Still, the very idea of that monster taking my child as his. We know, sighed a third elder in sympathy. No one should lose a child like this, Hiashi. But the vote was rather unanimous among the clans. The Hyuga clan must give up their eldest child to please the demon lord, or these attacks may never stop. Hiashi sighed and sat down in his chair. We are a ninja village, military tactics run deep in our roots. Yet we can do nothing against a few demons. He shook his head. I pray that the kami will take mercy on my daughter. Send word to the Hokage that I will escort Lady Hinata in the morning. Just let me spend one more night with my daughters as a family. We will do that, the elders chorused sadly. Hiashi rose once more, running his hands over his face. How am I to tell my daughters that they must say their goodbyes? Some hours later, two young women, one a 15-year-old girl wearing a lavender kimono with silver crescent moons patterns, and the other around 10 wearing a similar kimono except hers was embroidered with small bursts like fireworks, sat stunned at their father's words. Hinata, the oldest, cast her eyes down. I see. I'll do whatever you ask, father. What? Hanabi cried, standing up. Why? Why does she have to go? We have no choice, my dear, Hiashi sighed tiredly. Do not think I do this without conscience. We are one of the last noble families in the Leaf aside from the Kurama and Uchiha clans. It falls to us to make the tithe. Hanabi was not convinced. You just want her gone so she doesn't have to be branded. Hanabi. Hiashi snapped, quieting the child into huddling back next to her sister. Yes, you are correct. One reason I am sending Hinata is that she would have to be sealed, by Hyuga clan laws, while you would ascend as clan head. Call me a fool, but I cannot watch one of my precious daughters be sealed by that wretched curse mark. And you think making her the bride of a demon is better? Hanabi choked as tears sprang to her eyes. Hinata reached out and hugged the girl, patting her head. It's fine, Hanabi, Hinata said, smiling reassurance. Perhaps this demon lord is kind. Hiashi sighed at that, though I do not know much about him. It is said that he was birthed here in the village from the previous demon lord before she passed. I knew her to be a kind woman. Perhaps he is like her as you say, Hinata. Across the land of fire and they believe this to be my fault? The young man asked of the white-haired man in front of him, just because the demons are looking for food? The old man shrugged. People will place blame where there is none to place, kid, you know that. The kid was a young man of 16 with long, spiky blonde hair that was pulled back into a short ponytail with two bangs hanging down from his face. His eyes, slitted like a fox, and a startling cerulean blue, brought out by the stark contrast to his hair, were full of annoyance. He wore a red and black kimono, black flame designs along the cuffs of the sleeves and bottom. At his hip he wore a long, black katana, the sheath wrapped in red and black as well. I really don't see how sending me a woman is going to call off the attacks, Naruto sighed, scratching the back of his head. I'd much prefer that they left me alone. Can't you do something to stop them, pervy sage? Nothing's gonna stop them. Jiraiya huffed at the nickname. Then he grinned perversely. Beside, I bet they picked the most beautiful of all girls to send to you. He began to drool. Just picture it, Naruto, a lovely young thing with skin as fair as snow, and a set of nice, big. Naruto was turning as red as his kimono at the older man's words. Okay, that is enough. Naruto snapped frantically. The last thing I need is a woman running around here, especially with those damned spasms coming so frequent now, it's especially dangerous for her. Jiraiya sighed. You don't need to worry about that, Naruto. You know I gave your father my word that I'd help you with the fox. And I appreciate that, Naruto sighed, smiling, but it's still getting harder and harder for me to fight him. I'm surprised I've lasted this long. I've tried to reason with him, but he just won't listen to me. Jiraiya sighed in turn. You haven't been drawing on his chakra, so that must mean he's trying to force you to do so. But you don't have to worry about that. As long as you keep him at bay, he won't be able to hurt you or anyone," he said. "You've been keeping up with your sage training, haven't you?" Of course, Naruto sighed. But keeping myself from feeling rage and hate is hard enough without that damned fox reminding me at every damned turn of the evening that I was forced into this. And that I'll never be accepted by normal people, ninja or not. So what hope do I have that this girl is going to be any different? Jiraiya nodded in understanding. All of those are fair woes and worries, kid. But I really don't have the answer for you. The Nine Tails is the strongest of all demons. But your mother once told me that he could be tamed by love. How? I don't yet know. But she had faith in you, or else she never would have allowed the demon to be sealed inside you. Naruto stepped down the hall. The massive Shiro castle that was his home still amazed him at times. For all his woes, he lacked for nothing, really. Once a year a tithe was sent to him, food, silks, gold and jewels for the most part. Even a few animals that he'd released into the wilds around the castle. The only thing he really lacked for was human company. His godfather had been with him for most of his life, but that was all except for a few short visits from the old sage's former teammate, Tsunade. Thinking it over as he walked, Naruto thought that the coming of the girl might not be so bad. If she didn't mind what he was. When will she be arriving? Jiraiya shrugged. We are far away from the land of fire. Our little island is about week's worth trip all around, and that's if the person coming is on foot. Then it's a 2-day trip across the bay, if the travelers don't get caught in the whirlpools. It's already been 7 days since I got wind of the arrival, so it should be, well, any day now. Naruto sighed, turning to a window to look out over the island. The ruins of the hidden Eddy village, a grim reminder of what he had lost during the Second War. It had once been a rich little island that his clan had resided on in olden days. Now the once proud village was nothing but rubble. How I wish I could rebuild my home. We would need a lot of support for that, kid, Jiraiya smiled, but that's a wonderful dream. The boy grinned at him. Look, Naruto, don't be so down about the village, or the girl. In fact, she could turn out to be a blessing. If her family are rich, then perhaps she can help you build a new village. One you can rule as a good man. Naruto smiled at the thought. Maybe. He sighed, looking out toward the sea. His eyes widened as he caught sight of something on the horizon. I don't believe it. Jiraiya stepped up next to him and peered out to sea, spotting a ship rocking along on the thunderous waves. Well, that's not good. Looks like they're having bad luck with the whirlpools. Naruto sighed. Better get out there, pervy sage, or else they might go down. X out at CX, is this really what it's always like out here? Hiashi yelled as he tried to keep his footing on the deck of the ship. The whirlpools surrounding the ship were too small to pose a threat, but that didn't mean an easy ride for the Hyuga, or the crew. Afraid so, Lord Hyuga, roared the captain, 'tis a treacherous journey across the bay. Down below deck, a young woman was clinging to her bunk, her stomach churning from the motions of the ship. Suddenly, the ship lurched hard, and she was sent tumbling to the floor. She rolled across the floor unable to regain her footing. Why is the sea out here so rough? Hinata moaned to herself as she picked herself up. Hanabi? Hanabi, are you alright? The door to her cabin opened and her little sister stumbled in, barely able to keep herself up. Sis. I don't like this. Hinata knelt down so she could steady her, holding her close. It's going to be fine, Hanabi, you'll see. Hanabi still looked frightened. Is the demon lord doing this? No, Hinata said quickly. This is the land of whirling tides, so these are natural whirlpools, but they're small, and won't hurt the ship. Her words of comfort were soon shattered as a shout of maelstrom was heard above them. Hinata stiffened. Hanabi looked up at her sister. What's a maelstrom? Nothing, Hinata whispered, holding onto her sister. It's nothing at all. Hanabi heard her sister's heart quicken. She was lying. Hinata knew that they were done for. Maelstroms were monstrous whirlpools that no ship could escape. Hanabi shook with fear and buried her face in Hinata's chest to hide her tears. Above deck, Hiashi was feeling the same fear. The whirlpool was enormous, almost twice the size of their ship. Kami, help us. Ha 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 ha. Ask not Kami for help, but the great and powerful toad sage of Mount Myoboku, shouted a boisterous voice. Hiashi looked up from the sea just in time to see a massive tongue shooting toward the ship. What? He looked across the water, seeing a giant red toad wearing a hiyori sitting on the shore. Where did that thing come from? He yelled as the tongue wrapped around the ship, hauling it out of the water. Bring 'em in, Bunta. Stop yellin' in ma earsh. Croaked the toad as the was pulled toward the shore. Hiyashi nearly lost his grip on the railing as the ship lurched. What's going on here? Hiyashi roared. What's the meaning of this? The toad glared at him. Want me to put ya back in ta water? Atop the toad's head was a man dressed in kabuki attire, with stark white hair. Grinning like a madman. Oh, I wouldn't upset Mr. Gamabunta. He has a worse temper than some women I know. He cackled as the ship neared the shore. And the toad's massive mouth. Wait. Hiyashi all but screamed, don't let him eat us. Fei, spat Gamabunta, as he set the ship down in the shallow waters of the island. The last time I ate a human, I got heartburn for a week. And I still have a bad taste in my mouth. Maybe you just missed a bit of him in your teeth, joked the man on his head. The toad rolled both his massive eyes up at him. Moron, I don't have any teeth. Jiraiya cackled again and leapt from the great toad's head, careening down toward the ship. The people gathered on deck watched in amazement as the apparent madman crashed down on the deck, splintering the wood. Thank the heavens for your good fortune, friends, for you have had the pleasure of being rescued from certain death by none other than Mount Myoboku's legendary toad sage, whose manly physique and charm make women swoon and fall at his feet. He yelled as he struck a pose. Imagine his pervy shuffle from the anime, manga, swinging his head around, his palm thrust out. Yes, I am the ever-gallant Jiraiya.
Even the waves seemed to stop for a moment as Jiraiya finished his introductions, all the while Gamabunta was shaking his massive head with one webbed hand over his face.
How the hell did I get stuck with this guy? Gamabunta asked of no one in particular, looking down at the ship. What that old pervert is trying to say is that we don't mean any harm. He crouched down, facing a still flummoxed Hiyashi, who recognized the sage from the history books as one of the 3 Sannin of the Hidden Leaf Village. The island's master sent us out here to help once he saw that maelstrom forming. You really should have done your research before coming out here this far. It's high tide, and when the tides come in, the whirlpools around here get bigger and more violent, explained he the toad. Shaking himself of his shock, Hiyashi turned to Gamabunta with a slight bow. I'm in your debt for helping our ship, Lord Gamabunta, you and your summoner. Master Jiraiya, isn't it? Aha! Crowed the Sannin, so you have heard of me? Only because you were such a loudmouthed kid in your youth, said Gamabunta, pulled a pipe from his robes and placing it in his mouth. In any case, would you happen to be here to see the lord of the island? We are, Hiyashi nodded. Is it possible to speak with him? Jiraiya stepped forward, his geta clicking on the ruined deck. It is, but know that he is a little skeptical about this arrangement. He's not the most sociable of people. I understand, Hiyashi said, sighing. We will meet with him at his discretion. My daughters are rather nervous about this, though. He is civil, isn't he? At this, the Hyuga Lord noticed the cold glare of both the toad and his summoner. Apparently the demon lord was well liked by the two. He is as civil as the next person, Jiraiya clarified. He is simply unused to people visiting him on his island. Being banished and all, you understand. Oh, of course, Hiyashi stammered, bowing again. My apologies, I'm merely as nervous as my daughters. I've never even been in the presence of a summoning creature such as Lord Gamabunta. The toad and Sannin both shared a laugh. Well, you and your daughters are about to be in the presence of a very powerful man, even without the demon's power. XXX at the moment, Naruto was watching the scene unfold from the balcony of his castle. Thankfully, he noticed, Jiraiya and Gamabunta had saved the ship. A smile played at his lips as Bunta turned toward the castle. Many more people atop his head now, and started a slow, for a toad his size at least, trek home. Naruto then turned and stalked down the hall to the stairs, preparing to meet his very first guest since Tsunade's last visit. XXX Hinata was slightly shocked to see the castle. It was well known that the demon lords were cared for well in their isolation, but she hadn't realized just how well. As they crossed the bridge over the small moat, she noticed that the trees dotting both sides of the moat were sakura trees, though they had long since bloomed their last and were now skeletal compared to how they normally looked. When the spring came again, she knew that the land would be beautiful when the trees bloomed. As Jiraiya led them, he stopped at a large gate, and gave the double doors a push. To everyone's shock, they swung right open without much resistance. The Sannin grinned over his shoulder at them. Not bad for a 55-year-old geezer, eh? Hanabi giggled beside her sister at the man. He's funny. The castle was then within reach, and Hinata found herself breathing faster, her nerves catching up with her. All too soon, they were at the castle doors. Jiraiya led them inside. Please don't touch any of the artwork. Lord Naruto did many of the paintings himself, and he's fairly protective of them. The paintings were massive portraits, they found out, of none other than the fabled nine-tailed fox itself. Many, much to the fear of Hinata's little sister, were of the fox in terrifying battles, destroying the land with his fiery breath. The Lord of Whirl Castle did these. Hinata breathed out, another portrait catching her attention. This one was special, she knew. It was probably the latest work. The nine tails, Madara Uchiha atop his head, was facing down Hashirama Senju, the first Hokage of the Leaf. Jiraiya nodded, it's his way of passing time. As to why they all portray the fox, it's because it keeps the fox calm for a time while he takes the time to put detail on his form. They are magnificent, Hiashi muttered, his attention also on the paintings. Such detail is unheard of when portraying one of the 9 demons. Has he seen it? Jiraiya stopped then, turning his attention to the clan head. It haunts him. It's only because he tries to reason with the beast that he hasn't cut the link on his seal, and blocked the fox's voice from his mind. There were no more questions after the Toad Sage said this, and the Hyuga leader and his daughters were led further in until the hall opened up into a larger room where a veil obscured what looked like a small throne. Behind it sat the shadow of a man almost as tall as the Hyuga clan head, except, Hinata noticed through the thin veil, that he wore a black Inari mask, concealing the up half of his face, leaving only his mouth exposed. The 3 Hyuga could also feel a pressure coming from the figure, an ominous presence that dwarfed them, as if some monstrous creature stood before them, ready to pounce a moment's notice. Hiashi approached, Hinata and Hanabi behind him, side by side, and dropped to his knees to bow, the sisters following suit. Jiraiya stepped up to the right side of the screen, not bothering to bow, presenting Lord Naruto Uzumaki of Whirl Castle, Demon Lord of the Nine-Tailed Fox, and Master of Seals. He gave a pleasant smile to the masked figure as he gestured to the 3 Hyuga. My lord, may I present Lord Hiashi of the Hyuga clan of the village hidden in the leaves, and his 2 daughters. Raise your heads, Naruto intoned, and Hinata was surprised. His voice sounded so small. Hiashi and the girls did as they were told. I'm told you bring a daughter of your house in hopes of quelling recent attacks on the village? Hiashi nodded. We have, my lord. Many of the villagers believe you would be able to help us. Naruto, behind his screen and mask, grinned. Well, you are wrong. The demons don't listen to me any more than the nine-tailed fox does, which is often not at all. Why would you think that I had anything to do with the lower demons? Hiashi frowned. Because they are foxes, my lord, and we only know of one demon lord among the fox tribes. The 9 tails, Naruto growled. Do you have something to do with these attacks, fox? A deep rumbling voice sounded in the back of his mind, almost like it was laughing at him. Well, the brat decides to take initiative and speak to the prisoner.
The fox growled. Though it is of little concern of yours, the fox clans of the world do look to me as their leader. Without my rule, they run wild and without care as foxes tend to do. If they invade a village, though, it will not be for no reason as we tend to keep away from people unless necessary. Your kin must have done something to upset them.
Naruto grimaced. How so? I was only in the village long enough to learn to take care of myself. You would know the layout better than I would. Indeed I do. As a matter of fact, not far from the outskirts of the village walls, there once stood a shrine to Lady Inari, my once wife, and a great leader among us. Ask if the shrine still stands, said the demon, Naruto catching a glimpse of the beast sneering from behind the bars of the seal. Outside the village there stood a shrine to the goddess, Inari, Naruto said, and he noticed that the Hyuga man flinched. Does it still stand? Hiashi sighed. I know of the shrine, and no, it no longer stands. Some months ago, just before the attacks started, a small group of ninja attacked the village, attempting to infiltrate the village, while a group of our ninja met them. The shrine was caught in the crossfire between the 2 forces. The 9-tailed fox laughed loudly, making Naruto wince. Oh, this keeps getting better and better, brat. That shrine was sacred to my people, and if it's been destroyed, then they will not stop until they are either wiped out, or another shrine is built, and maybe not even then. Naruto's grimace grew into a frown. This is not good. My lord? Hiashi asked. Naruto rose, much to Jiraiya's surprise, and stepped out from behind his screen. Hinata and Hanabi huddled close behind their father as they saw the black and red mask on his face. The shrine must be rebuilt, he said, motioning for Hiashi to stand. Though I don't know if this will stop the attacks. It may please them well enough to listen to reason, and make peace. Hiashi stood, still taller than the boy in front of him. You are certain this will lessen the attacks? Perhaps, Naruto nodded, looking down at the two girls. Now, in regards to your daughter. Please, Hiashi said quickly, stopping the young lord out of surprise. My lord, you must understand, my clan is harsh to those that are weak. When the main branch of the family produces two heirs, one must be branded with a curse mark of servitude. The slits in the mask for the eyes of Naruto's mask lit up crimson for a moment. You mean to ask me to take her so that she can avoid this? Hiashi looked ashamed for the first time in the girls' lives. The Hyuga were proud and powerful. Hinata knew this as a member of the clan. Weakness was not tolerated by them, and now she saw her father displaying something the elders would consider weak and unforgivable. He dropped to his knees and bowed his head. I do not ask, my lord, I beg of you. The mark has already cost me more than you can know. I cannot put my daughters through such a trial. Naruto sighed, seeing the resolve from the man. Nothing he could or would say wouldn't change his mind. But being a seal user himself, Naruto found himself curious. This seal, what does it do? Hiashi raised his head. It is a monstrous construct that the founding members of my clan created for weaker Byakugan users. We grew in numbers, and the branch family was feared because they were more than the main family, so the elders created a seal to be placed on the head, inhibiting their Byakugan, and subjecting them to great pain, or death if they disobeyed the main branch. He hung his head low. I lost my brother to the seal, and his son was sealed when he turned 6, just before he passed. The crimson returned to his eyes. You condone this? No, Hiashi snapped. I hate the way my clan treats its fellows. I would have done away with the mark long ago if I could. But the elders outvote me every time. Naruto looked down at the two girls again. A mistake. The eldest was looking at him with the largest, gentlest eyes he'd ever seen. Perhaps the only eyes he'd seen besides Tsunade's or Shizune's. She was pleading with him in her own way. The little girl by her side was looking up at him with fear. She was terrified of him because of what he was. But there was no fear coming from her sister. She was, if Naruto could say, the most beautiful person he had ever seen. Her hair was long, well down her back, and her skin, much to his surprise as Jiraiya was right, was pale and fair as snow. The rest of her. Thank whatever gods there might be that he was wearing a mask. If anything, it kept the blush hidden on his face. Jiraiya had also been right about her figure, or at least what he had imagined before Naruto had cut him off. She was a beauty. What is your name? Naruto asked. Hinata, my lord, she said shakily. Naruto nodded. Do you agree with this? I know you must not like this arrangement. The girl blushed prettily. I don't know what to think. But I understand why my father wishes to avoid branding one of us. My clan, as father said, is harsh in its treatment of weak members, or families with more than one child. I don't want to see that happen to my sister, so I would voluntarily take the seal if I could save her. As it stands, I am weaker than she is, so I would be sealed, regardless. And staying here? Naruto asked. I am considered a demon by many, including your clan. Hiashi was watching the exchange with interest. Hinata rose from the floor, Hanabi rising with her, and stood straight. She stood just a little shorter than he, the top of her head leveled out with his eyes. She lifted her small, gentle hands to his mask. Naruto didn't move as the mask was lifted away, revealing his face to her. The blush returned as she took him in. His face was round, and had an almost childish look. Except there was a maturity in the angles of his cheeks which were marked by 3 whisker-like markings on each side. His eyes were what held her. Never before had she seen such eyes, like rough-cut sapphires. The slitted pupils only made him more exotic looking to her, as did his blonde hair. Jiraiya was grinning away at the sight. She's not afraid. You don't look like a demon. Hinata smiled. Even if you don't take me for a wife, will you let me stay here? For my little sister? Naruto, seeing no way to refuse, smiled. You may stay. Hinata and Hanabi beamed at him. But the Hyuga clan must do something for me in return. Hiashi smiled. Despite the blind offer, name it, and if is within my power, it shall be done. Naruto smiled in turn at the man. Oh, it is. I'm not the sort of person that asks for the moon. Naruto said, stepping over to the wall where yet another portrait hung. This one was of a sprawling village with the castle in the background. What I want from you is aid in rebuilding my ancestral village of whirling tides. Naruto held out his hand to the Hyuga clan head. Do we have a deal? Hiashi smiled genuinely as he reached out and shook the young lord's hand. We have an agreement. Hinata and her family were shown to their quarters by the young lord. To her surprise and delight, the rooms were fit for none but a lord. The futon laid out for them was large enough for the three of them to share. It was a fair thing, in Hiyashi's view, since he would spend one last evening with his family. Naruto, however, was nowhere to be seen during dinner. The dining hall was as grand as the bedrooms, fit for a daimyo, yet the young demon lord was not seen. Though Jiraiya didn't act as though this were a strange thing to happen, only introducing them to the delights found only on the island of whirling tides. Hanabi was particularly enamored by a strange fruit that neither Hiashi or Hinata had ever seen. It looked like a pear, yet it was orange with purple swirling marks around it, and it was soft, and very easy to bite into. Other oddities of the island included fish and other sea life that the inland family had never encountered. This included the main dish, a rather frightening fish that Jiraiya called a black dragon. In Hinata's opinion, the fish was aptly named, for it looked viciously similar to paintings she had seen in the village of dragons. It even had horns on its head. She was afraid to try a bite. The rest of the meal more than made up for it, though. Most of the delicacies of the table were, to her surprise, grow or produced from the island itself. Why have you not opened a trade route? Hinata asked, shocked. Many of these would be considered fit for feudal lords. Jiraiya sighed sadly as he set down his chopsticks. I did try, Lady Hinata. He looked at the small family. Once, about 4 or 5 years ago, I took a small load of fruits and vegetables to the mainlands. At first, they attracted a fair amount of attention, but once someone realized they were from the Whirlpool Islands, I was hard-pressed to get myself out of town fast enough without hurting anyone, much as I wanted to. Why would they do such a thing when these are perfectly fine? Hiashi mumbled, then it dawned on him. People will always fear demons, Jiraiya said, and they fear being tainted by the demon, so they fear anything that might be corrupted by the demon. He picked up one of the fruits, such as a piece of fruit grown on the island ruled by the 9th demon lord. You know that people are calling these demon fruits? There's no demonic aura about them. He snapped, crushing the fruit. It's just as well that my lord lives here alone, else the people may try to harm him. Hinata looked down at her food. He must be very lonely. This drew the attention of her family and host, all of them watching her expectantly. You speak as though you felt that way, Lady Hinata? Jiraiya asked. I have, she sighed, looking at her father and sister. From the time that I could walk, I was groomed to be as the heir of the clan, the only heir, so it was expected of me to be strong and lead the clan properly. And then my little sister came into the world. I was so happy to have a sibling because friendship outside or inside the clan was frowned upon. But then I learned of the cruel twist of fate that her birth brought about. One of us was to be sealed, and one of us was to be the next leader of the clan. I would have willingly chosen to be branded, but Hanabi was much stronger than I was at her age, therefore, she would have been the better choice. Hiashi looked at his eldest daughter sadly. I would have found a way to spare you. Hinata smiled at him kindly. You would have been branded as a traitor and put to death by the seal. She said, but, cruel as our family can seem, I'm happy to have had the two of you in my life, and hope that you will continue be part of my life, even though my home is here now. Of course they will, Jiraiya grinned. You really think that Naruto will just send them away, never to return? Far from it. As much as I fear for him around normal people and ninja, he craves human contact. He'll have you over as often as you can manage. Where is the young lord? Hiashi asked. I would have thought he would attend dinner. He normally meditates during the evening and eats later, Jiraiya sighed. The meditation helps him communicate with the fox, and his training. You see, he is a practitioner of senjutsu, an ancient art that calls upon the natural chakras of nature itself. It takes a very long time to master, but he seems to excel at it. So the lord is also a sage? Hanabi asked, smiling. What else can he do? Jiraiya chuckled at the child. Well, little one, I already told you he's a master at the art of sealing, but he's a wind user as well, thanks to his father and, in a way, the fox. Wind-style ninjutsu is rare in the Leaf Village, and Naruto came from a wind-natured family. And the fox has the affinities for fire and wind. He isn't able to use fire yet, but he practices endlessly with it. Really? Hiyashi smiled at this. That is quite a coincidence, as Hinata is a wind user as well. Oh? Jiraiya smiled widely. This is a good thing, I think. Perhaps the shared element will help them get to know each other? I can try, Hinata blushed, but our clan is mostly earth users, so well, the elders are not here to badger you anymore. Hiyashi smiled cheekily. You can do whatever you please without fear of their disapproval, or their wrath. Naruto sat in a dark, damp sewer, staring at a set of giant iron bars. Behind those bars was a grinning face with two giant red eyes glaring down at the young man. I do not know why you persist in these meetings, brat, sneered the fox. You know that I want nothing more than to see your suffering death and reclaim my freedom. He rammed his clawed hands against the bars. Naruto held his place firmly. The reason I keep this up is because, unlike most people, I try to see the good in all things, even demon beasts like you, fox. You still have not answered any of my questions. Why were you, of all the tailed beasts, sealed when you stayed free the longest of all? The fox swished his tails coyly. Who can say, brat? For all I know, the humans were too frightened of me to approach. I don't believe that, Naruto said, stepping toward the seal, making the fox raise the hackles on his back. You, out of all the others I've heard of, have never truly attacked anyone, save for the battle between Madara Uchiha and Hashirama Senju. Tell me, why did you fight then? Why would you even fight alongside a human, let alone a ninja, in the first place? Naruto was right at the bars, glaring right into the eyes of the beast he held prisoner, the fox growling angrily. You know nothing, you insignificant little insect. Then help me understand, Naruto shouted. Don't you see? I want to help you. Help me? You cannot even help yourself. The fox roared. When you still resided in that ungrateful village, who was that always healed your wounds when the villagers would attack you? That looked out and cared for you when no one else would? Was it not I? 4 great claws shot through the gaps in the bars, mere inches away from Naruto's face. How do you intend to help me? I don't know, Naruto said, smiling, but I always find a way to get things done. Out of the shadows of the cage rose the massive figure of the 9-tailed fox, his eyes burning with hatred. You will not find it so easy with me, brat. I am not like my brethren. I am above them in all else, and you shall feel that power. You will crave it. Red mist began bubbling up around the young lord, swirling around and catching him in a stranglehold of pure, raw power. Don't do this, Naruto yelled, feeling the burn of the chakra, 9 tails. That is not my name, brat, the fox sneered. But my name is something no mortal shall ever know again. Burn Naruto Uzumaki, feel my hate, and suffer as I have suffered for 1,000 years. Visions began flashing through the blonde lord's mind of horrible battles long past. Of bloody fields covered in corpses under his feet. The screams of the dying filling his ears. The sound of steel clashing against steel, and the irony smell of blood. Naruto was in hell. Naruto felt his mind beginning to break as he watched battle after battle, the senseless bloodshed making sick. He fell to his knees back in the real world, vomiting all over the floor. Naruto. He looked up to see Jiraiya hurrying toward him with a tray of food. What's happened? He knelt beside him, setting the tray down so he could rub the boy's back in comfort. Naruto swiped at his mouth, feeling hot tears beginning to run down his face. The fox. He is being far more malicious than normal. He placed his hand over his eyes, trying in vain to hide the angry tears that leaked from them. I'm beginning to think that this is hopeless. He's so angry every time we speak.
Jiraiya looped his arms under his charge's shoulders and helped him to his feet. Listen, kid, I know you want to make peace with the fox, but perhaps you should cut yourself off. Look what it's doing to you. He gestured to the boy's features, his whisker marks on his face having become deeper, and more scar-like. As Naruto turned to a looking glass to see himself, he noticed that his fangs had grown longer as well, and even his nails looked like tiny daggers.
Naruto sighed. This is only temporary, he said, hiding his hands in his sleeves. You know that. Now, how are my guests doing? Jiraiya chuckled. Worried about your new, bouncy wife? Naruto growled as his face reddened. She is not my wife. Yet, Jiraiya smirked. Admit it, Naruto, she's as attractive as the wife of a daimyo. She's a flower dropped in the middle of a mud pit. All right. Naruto roared. She's beautiful. I get it. Can we please stop talking about my— He snapped his mouth shut as Jiraiya grinned at him. No, don't even start, pervy sage. Do not start with that damned research. Jiraiya resisted the urge to burst out laughing. Oh, if my hunch is right, then I won't have to. I'll just sit back and watch the fun. Naruto ruffled his hair in aggravation. Are they doing all right, or not? I trust dinner, at least, went well. Jiraiya sighed and retold of the events at dinner, mostly brushing over Hinata's concern of her new lord's solitude. She seems openly concerned for you, kid. You might consider her a little bit? Naruto huffed and headed to his chambers. Look, while I appreciate what you might be insinuating, but I will not force a girl's affections just because her clan thinks it's her duty. He threw his hands up. Gah. This sounds like one of those cheesy sex novels you write. Oh ho. Jiraiya grinned perversely, so you have been reading my work. Oh shut up. Naruto snapped. Never, Jiraiya chuckled as he followed his lord down the halls. But Naruto, what are you going to do? I mean, what if the new shrine isn't enough to appease the foxes? Naruto shrugged. I suppose I'll have to visit them. Much as I think that's a bad idea. But I can't think of anything else to do if it doesn't work. Jiraiya sighed as they turned the corner. You sure you want to go back there again? He asked. Recalling the day they had left. We didn't exactly make a lot of friends when we were there. Naruto shrugged, also recalling the event. 10 years ago, when Naruto was still 6, getting ready to enter his life of solitude, the village civilians as well as a few ninja had decided to give him a send-off. And not a pleasant one. If Jiraiya hadn't been there, it would have been undoubtedly the release of the fox all over again. While Naruto's injuries hadn't been fatal, thanks to the fox, of course, they had been terrible wounds that no normal human, ninja or otherwise, could have survived without a good medical ninja on hand. Jiraiya had gone on a rampage. It was a wonder that the ninjas still on Naruto's side for the most part had let him go into exile with him instead of putting him with the death penalty. I know we didn't, Naruto sighed, scratching the back of his head. All the more reason to go back, and make them see that I'm not the demon that everyone thinks I am. If we have to. He said as he neared his room, sliding the door open. In all honesty, I don't want to go back, but I can't just leave someone helpless if I can make a difference. Like how you took in the girl? Jiraiya asked as the two entered his room, the older man leaning against the doorframe. Naruto. You looked like a normal, bright-eyed child back then, but now. Jiraiya gestured to him, the fox. It hasn't been kind to you. Don't get me wrong, kid, I'll be the first to admit that you're a handsome young man that would have ladies falling at your feet. Watch it, Naruto grinned. But your eyes, claws, and fangs. You're no Inuzuka. You look wilder than they do. Naruto sighed, palming his face, feeling his claws against his skin. I know. But that's me, isn't it? Naruto Uzumaki, demon lord of the Whirling Islands. I'm supposed to look like a monster, aren't I? Jiraiya sighed, running a hand over his face. You're supposed to be a normal, happy boy at 16. I'm just sorry I couldn't give that to you. Naruto started stripping out of his kimono. You've been good to me, Jiraiya. I couldn't have asked for a better father. Even my real one. He was a better man than me, sighed the old man, pushing off from the door. Good night, kid. Try not to scare the guests, alright? No promises, Naruto sighed, knowing full well what the night had in store for him. Hinata felt peaceful as she slept that night, sandwiched between her father and little sister as she was. Hanabi being snuggled right up against her sister while Hiashi snored away on the other side. Around the hour of midnight, something disturbed her, though. Hinata was normally a peaceful, heavy sleeper, yet something had woken her. As she opened her eyes and looked around, everything seemed fine. Except she could feel something that was coming from down the hall. Curious, she carefully removed herself from the bed, trying not to wake her family. Unbeknownst to her, Hiashi watched as she went, one gleaming white eye following her out of the room as the door slid open enough to allow her out, and closed again. Be careful, daughter. Hinata was careful, being a practitioner of the gentle fist. Her steps were light and quick as she padded down the hall, leading her, surprisingly, to her lord's room. The door, so obvious, was painted with the snarling visage of the fox, once again, parting down the middle between the eyes so the face was split when the door opened. The door was a daunting deterrent for anyone that was foolish enough to even attempt to sneak up on the man inside, but for her, with the aid of the Byakugan, she could see that no one was inside, save for the thrashing figure lying on the bed. Worried for him, she slid the door open a small fraction to squeeze through, and hurried inside. "Mill Lord?" Her answer was a groan and a whimper. She saw the young man tossing and turning on his bed, a sheen of sweat visible on his skin under the dim light of the moon through the partially opened balcony doors. Hinata hurried to him, careful not to trip, and knelt by his side. "My lord, are you all right?" She reached to place a hand on his head, but his eyes snapped open and his hand shot out and wrapped around hers in an iron grip. Hinata squeaked in alarm as his eyes bore into hers. No longer the blue hues they had been but crimson with fear and rage. My lord," she stammered. I, it's me. Hinata eek." In one swift motion she was lifted up and over him, crashing back down on the futon with the wind knocked out of her as she found herself staring up at the young demon lord. Naruto was panting, from what, she didn't know, but she did know that he was not himself. No, even if it had been a brief encounter of only a few hours, she knew that he wasn't a violent person like this. And Naruto? She reached up tentatively to touch his face, those red eyes following her hand as if it were a snake ready to bite him. But the moment she touched his face, something registered. She felt him trembling, he was scared. "Hinata." The crimson leaked from his eyes, replaced by the blue that she had first known. "What are you?" What happened to you?" Hinata asked, cutting him off. Why you were trashing around like you were in PPP pain, so I thought I would help you." Naruto looked down at her, realizing the awkwardness of their position, and quickly raised himself away from her to sit beside her. "You don't need to worry. I was just having a nightmare. It's something that happens a lot." He stood, offering a hand to help her up. "I'm sorry if I scared you, Lady Hinata. I didn't hurt you, did I?" Hinata shook her head, taking his proffered hand. "I was more worried about you, my lord." "Naruto will do just fine," he said, smiling at her. "I've never been one for titles." Hinata blushed. "As you wish," she said. As she rose, her worry was replaced by embarrassment as she realized that Naruto was bare-chested, giving her a full view of his upper body. She quickly turned her eyes away. "I'm sorry for coming into your room unannounced. But she started twiddling her fingers in nervousness. Naruto raised his brow, looking down and realized the problem. Smiling to himself, he picked up his discarded robe. "You actually came at the perfect time. Normally, my dreams stay with me through the night, never even waking me. But when I sensed your presence, it snapped me out of it." He tied his obi loosely. "You have my thanks for that. But I'm the one that needs to feel grateful." Hinata thought to herself as she felt the heat leave her cheeks as he clothed himself. "And Naruto. If I may ask, what was your nightmare?" Naruto sighed and strode over to the balcony, Hinata following after him. What met her eyes was a view so breathtaking that she thought she was dreaming. The moonlight shone down across the island, giving it an almost ghostly glow, casting shadows here and there, shadows of ruined buildings dotting the land. Naruto was looking out over the ruined village himself. "My dreams change from night to night," he said quietly while leaning against the railing. "Often, I see my life as it was in the Hidden Leaf Village. All those people wishing me dead because of what they thought I was." The nine-tailed fox. Hinata bit her lip helplessly as she saw the sadness on his face. "Sometimes I'll see through the eyes of the fox itself, witnessing battle after battle since the dawn of the ninja world." He shivered. "Those are the worst of the dreams. All those people fighting and dying for no reason. It makes me sick." "And so you came here," Hinata murmured, watching the clouds pass slowly by the moon. "My childhood in the village, though not as harsh as yours, was not an easy one," she said, sidling up beside him, taking a small comfort from the warmth radiating from him. "When I was small, a man from the land of Lighting's cloud village stole me away. My father stopped him, killing him, but the Raikage blamed us for killing his ambassador, and demanded that my father be turned over to them, so that he would be killed for his crimes." Naruto looked down at her with his brow raised once more. "How is that possible? If he was to be killed, how did he get out of it?" Hinata felt tears stinging her eyes. Father had a twin brother. An identical twin. Uncle Hizashi volunteered his own life in exchange for my father's. He knocked father out and took his place so that he wouldn't stop him. And so he died, finally free of our family's curse mark. It only leaves you when death comes." She heard the wood groan under Naruto's clenched hands. She looked down and was shocked to see that he was gauging his fingertips into the wood with his claws. "And Naruto?" she asked, looking up at his face. His eyes were closed tightly, his teeth grinding as he tried to hold in his anger. Lady Hinata, his voice sounded warped, not his own, forgive me. But the more I hear about your clan and that mark, the more I hate the elders for keeping such a damnable tradition. The wood splintered in grip, jabbing into the flesh of his hands and drawing blood. Hinata gasped and reached for his hands. Lord Naruto, you'll ruin your hands. Naruto was taken aback by the girl's reaction. Rather than fear his strength, she worried for the minuscule injury he dealt himself. Her eyes seemed to glow as she used her Kekkei Genkai to locate the splinters and pick them out, careful not cause him any more discomfort. Once she was done, the wounds healed, a faint red glow around them as the Nine Tails chakra did its work. She made to pull her hands away, but he took them in his own, bringing them closer to him. Raised to fight all your life, she looked up at him as he spoke, her cheeks reddening. Yet you have such gentle hands, hands that were never meant to cause harm to anyone. So warm, Hinata thought, looking down at their hands. These are the hands of a demon lord? His hands were rough, worked all of his life, yet gentle as she knew he was in his heart. You should go back to your room. Naruto smiled at her. What if your family worries? Hinata blinked. Why yes, I should BBGG getting back. She stammered, back away and bowing hastily. I'll see you in the morning. Naruto smiled, nearly laughing as she stumbled across the room, nearly tripping over the futon as she made for the door. As she left, Naruto's smile remained, his nightmares chased away and forgotten. Hinata woke up in her own bed hours after her encounter with her new lord, his words still ringing in her ears of how her hands were not meant for harming others, and the gentle touch of his hands against hers. She rolled to her side, finding herself alone on the futon, and her room as she soon discovered, looking around the room as she sat up. To her surprise, the sun was already well past dawn. She had never been allowed to sleep so late before. She laid back against her pillow, sighing in content, thinking that it was very nice to wake up late on occasion. And it suddenly hit her. This was her life now. She didn't need to worry or be afraid of being thought weak by others. She was safe, her sister was safe, and her father would be proud of her, either way. The thought brought a smile to her lips. I'm free. She sighed, closing her eyes happily. He's so kind, and gentle.
Suddenly a powerful gust of wind blew through her room, startling her into sitting up. She looked toward the open doors only to have another powerful gust roar past. What in the world? She got to her feet and made her way out to her balcony which overlooked the courtyard. Below, she found none other than her lord. Naruto, bare-chested once more, moving through a series of movements, all the while a visible stream of wind was moving around him almost like a serpent.
Hinata was amazed. This was no jutsu she had ever seen or even heard of. It was almost like he was manipulating the wind and air itself as he moved. Master Jiraiya said that he was a wind master. Maybe I can do this, too? She thought as she continued to watch him, her cheeks blossoming as she did so. Naruto was what many girls her age considered a prime specimen. He was more than well-toned in his body, strong and athletic. His face, while still childish, was cute, and vaguely handsome. And those eyes. Hinata found herself sighing. Naruto stopped moving, and looked in her direction, a smile coming to his lips when he caught sight of her. Hinata, her shyness taking a quick leave of absence, smiled in return with a small wave in his direction. He grinned mischievously, crouching low before lifting off the ground with a whirlwind beneath him, lifting him high into the air. To say Hinata was stunned by his sudden touchdown on her balcony was an understatement. She was floored. How did Mil Lord. You. Hinata stuttered as he smiled a greeting to her. Wind chakra, he said in way of explanation, scratching the back of his head sheepishly. It's fairly advanced, but then. I've had a long time to practice. That's incredible. Hinata smiled, bringing her hands together in delight. Do you think I could learn how? Naruto arched an eyebrow at her. You're a wind style user? She nodded, smiling still. Yes, my affinity is wind. She said before averting her eyes as they began to wander. And Naruto. Must you always walk around half naked? Naruto looked down at himself and sighed. I'm sorry if this bothers you, but I'm still not used to having other people around me yet. Other than Granny Tsunade and Shizune, you're the only girl I've ever really met. Neither of them ever complained while I trained. Matter of fact, Shizune always made it a habit to watch. I believe I understand why, Hinata said to herself. Where are my father and little sister? I hadn't realized that I'd slept so late. Jiraiya is touring them around the island. Naruto explained, smirking. They shouldn't be gone for much longer. We intend to be in the hidden leaf village by evening, he said, causing the girl to blink. How is that possible? She asked, looking back at him. Why you're not going to tell me that you can fly, are you? Naruto grinned. No, but I have other ways to travel off my island if I have to, he said, holding out his arm to her. Shall we have breakfast? I haven't yet eaten, and you look like you could use a bite before we leave. Hinata nodded, looping her arm through his and letting him lead her. Once they finished their meal, Naruto showed her around her new home, fully clothed, which she was thankful for. Such a large castle it was that she feared getting lost sooner or later. Plus the distraction of his chest was. Well, needless to say that Hinata would not have seen much if he had not donned his robes except for said chest. The tour was mostly of the halls, and where they lead, bathing areas on the lower levels, which Hinata was delighted to find out were built around a natural hot spring. All of the halls they passed through were decorated with his work, many of the lands instead of the monstrous fox he held prisoner, and the sea. She even spotted one that looked like the Leaf Village. But there was one that they came upon that had Naruto's tenant growling. Hinata, however, was speechless. All of the paintings that she had seen so far were off the Nine Tails, or of the landscape. The portrait was of a woman, her hair black as midnight, and eyes the color of violets. She wore a red kimono as she seemed to dance through a forest of bamboo, those same eyes staring at whoever looked upon her. This, Hinata knew, was no mortal woman. She was beyond fair, even seeming to glow. Her facial features gave off a fox-like demeanor, even having slightly pointed ears, and long nails that resembled claws, much like Naruto's had the previous evening. Naruto. Who is this? Hinata asked. That, Naruto sighed, is the wife of the nine-tailed fox, goddess of all the foxes, Inari. Hinata nodded, seeming to accept this. She certainly looked like a goddess. She's beautiful. She was, the fox growled lowly. Naruto sighed, his eyes downcast. The fox showed me a vision of her once, and I decided to make a painting for him. Sometimes I would fall asleep in my room, and wake up the next morning sitting in front this portrait. He smiled. I think he must have liked it. It does not do her justice, brat, the fox growled again, giving Naruto the vision of the beast sitting with his head setting on his paws. But it is a passable likeness. She would appreciate the effort. I'm glad you think she would, Naruto said. Perhaps I can make one of the two of you? Do not take me lightly, Uzumaki, he snapped, rattling Naruto's ears. You could never understand what my bond with her meant, let alone capture it in a painting. Naruto sighed and decided to drop it for the time until he knew the fox would be happy. Sometime far in the future. In the meantime, he turned his attention back to the girl beside him who was still gazing at the portrait. It must be terrible for the fox to be separated from his wife, she said. It's no wonder he's so upset. Naruto nodded, not really knowing what to say. He did hope he never had to go through that sort of pain. He hasn't told me anything other than how beautiful she was. He must love her very much. Unknown to Naruto, deep inside his seal, the nine-tailed fox lay with his head upon his paws, a single tear falling from his eye. Come along, Hanabi, we don't want to be late. Hiyashi laughed as the child darted in and out of the flowers. Jiraiya had led them to the back gardens, which were in full bloom with flowers Naruto had gathered from across the land when he had the chance. The girl giggled before kneeling down to inspect another plant. It looked like a rose, but the blossoms were clustered together like hyacinth plants. The blossoms were white, with small silver lines on the petals. Jiraiya smiled at her. Fine, she has good taste. That's a rose found here on the island that makes a very fine tea when one dries the petals, and the scent drives away most insects that bite or sting. Bees are the only ones it won't drive off. Hiyashi bent to have a look for himself. I've never seen a rose that grew its blossoms in clusters like this. And you say you can make a tea out of this? Jiraiya nodded. I'm no herbalist, but when we tried it, it tasted naturally sweet. Yet it wasn't overpowering, you wouldn't think it came from a rose petal, he said, smiling as the child yelped when a bee buzzed by her ear and landed on the plant. It's also does anyone with aches and pains very good when brewed, and it's very calming. You should take a plant back and try to cultivate it. Hanabi looked delighted and looked to her father. Can we? Hiyashi nodded. That will be fine as long as Lord Naruto doesn't mind. Doesn't mind what? Asked the young lord himself as he and Hinata walked into the garden, The young woman's arm looped through his. Was there a plant that caught your eye?
Jiraiya chuckled. Hanabi likes the lunar rose she found. I was just explaining its properties to Master Hiyashi and suggested he take one back to the mainland to cultivate.
Naruto nodded as Hinata left his side to see the plant for herself. A good idea. But let's hope that no one decides to destroy it like that incident with the fruit stand, eh? Jiraiya nodded. That was a blunder on my part when I traveled just to the coast and not far enough inland. Minutes later, the group was ready to depart. Hanabi clutching her flower pot tightly with a beaming little smile on her face. Instead of heading to the harbor, as the Hyuga expected, Naruto and Jiraiya led them into the lower parts of the castle and to a large room with a familiar seal in the center. Hiyashi's eyes widened as he recognized the seal immediately. That is the fourth seal. Jiraiya smiled. He was Naruto's father, he said, in his days here with his wife, and the previous demon lord, Lady Kushina. Minato wrote down everything he knew about the Flying Thunder God technique for Naruto to study, and one day learn. Which he did at a very young age, I might add, and once we knew that he had it down, Naruto and I placed seals all over so we could walk out into the world and explore. How else do you think he has so many plants in the garden? Naruto grinned at Hinata, giving her a conspirational wink. Don't tell anyone. Okay. I'm technically not supposed to go anywhere, let alone across the land of fire. Hinata giggled. Then what does this little trip entail? Naruto sighed. Hopefully a good ol' reunion with Grandpa Sarutobi. He smiled, looking over at Jiraiya, and a big hug from Granny Tsunade and Shizune if they're still in the village. Lord Hokage is doing very well for someone of his age, Hiyashi smirked. Though Ho's grandson is somewhat overwhelming in his attempts to take the seat. Konohamaru is a big dummy, Hanabi huffed. He's always getting in the way when I'm out in the village, and he's always teasing me. Jiraiya smirked. I was just like that when I was a brat. His smirk grew into a huge grin, but that was only because I had a thing for Tsunade back in the day. Hanabi squealed, hiding behind her father, who chuckled at the girl's antics. Konohamaru is a fine young ninja, Hiyashi said, patting her hair. He would make a fine husband if you chose him. And end up with a monkey? Hanabi stuck her tongue out in a very unladylike manner. Bleg. Neither Naruto or Hinata could contain their laughter at the girl's disgust and nearly doubled over, holding onto each other to keep their balance. Alright. Naruto laughed, moving to the center of the room. Let's get going. Hiyashi, have the girls hold onto you tightly, and place your hand on my shoulder. And whatever you do, do not let go. Jiraiya did the first time, and ended up in the land of tea while I landed on my target seal. Jiraiya laughed and took hold of Naruto's left shoulder while Hiyashi took hold of the right, his daughters wrapping their arms around him. It wasn't all that bad. I landed in a very nice hot spring. He laughed, grinning like a loon. Naruto sighed. Pervert. Where are we to come out? Hiyashi asked. At my home just outside the village, Jiraiya said, or what used to be my home since I left for good. Naruto nodded. It's a short walk to the gate from there. Ready? Naruto asked, forming the necessary hand seals, gaining a nod from the Hyuga family. He grinned as sparks started flying from the seal, then hang on tight, because here we flash. X equals for Izumo and Katetsu. It was a normal, boring day on guard duty. The two Chunin were almost wishing for something to happen, one resorting to reading a certain orange book by a certain pervert who would remain nameless for the time being. Yes, about 5 seconds. Flash, go. Izumo and Katetsu jumped from their seats in alarm at the sound of the voice, followed by yelps and shrieks of alarm from two females. In a flash of gold, 5 figures had appeared at the gate. 3 of them they recognized immediately as the departed Hyuga clan head and his daughters. The other 2 were slightly harder to distinguish. One was a big man, about 6 foot with stark white hair pulled back in a spiky ponytail with a headband that read, oil, with 2 small horns at the top. He wore the colorful attire of a kabuki actor, and wooden geta, and sported an enormous scroll strapped to his back. The other was even stranger as he appeared to be a young man in his mid-teens. Like the elder man, he wore colorful attire, a black and red kimono, black flames around his cuffs and feet. Note. Yes, this is basically Naruto's sage coat turned into a full attire of a kimono. His hair appeared to be blonde, also pulled into a short spiky ponytail, and a black fox mask across his face, concealing his eyes and upper face, leaving his mouth free. Hiyashi stumbled back from the young man. Good heavens. What a way to travel. I felt like I was falling through space itself. My tummy feels funny, Hanabi mumbled, balancing her rose on her hip while she rubbed her stomach. That's natural, Jiraiya said, rotating his shoulders. I felt the same way when we tried it for the first time, and poor Naruto here said he'd gotten sick. Hinata looked at the sheepish young lord. It's true, got sick as soon as I landed. He chuckled, never thought I'd be one for motion sickness. Excuse us. Azumo said, making his presence known, but who are you two? And what business do you have in the village? Naruto grinned. A great deal of business, as it happens, he said, adjusting his mask. As to who I am, I think it best if one of you fetched the Hokage, as he would very much like to know that I am here. The two Chunin were thoroughly confused until Jiraiya stepped forward and bowed with a great flourish, presenting the Lord of the Whirling Isles, and the ninth Demon Lord, Naruto Uzumaki. If the two men had been confused, now they were shocked, and downright frightened as they paled, recognizing the mask that adorned the young man's face. Naruto held up a hand. I've not come to cause trouble, but rather to help. I've been told that you've been having trouble with the local fox population. Summon the Hokage and I will see to the problem immediately. Needless to say that when Naruto named himself, both Chunin took off, leaving a dust cloud in their wake, also leaving the young lord and his companions behind, said Lord gazing after them with a large bead of sweat rolling down his face. I don't think they like me. Jiraiya sighed, idiots. Well, I suppose we'd better get comfortable. He crouched down and took out a notepad. Besides, I need to get started on my next piece of work. Work? Naruto scoffed. You call that work? I've read scrolls that were more entertaining than that. That. Swill. Swill? Jiraiya roared, snapping the pad closed, and glaring at the boy. You wouldn't know fine piece of literature if it came up and bit you on the Not in front of Hanabi if you please. Hiyashi yelled hurriedly covering the child's ears, who giggled at the action. Hinata smiled and rolled her eyes as the young lord and Sannin started a heated argument over the elder's proffered literary tastes. In the end, even her father was laughing at the pair, so much unlike what either of them had expected. And all too soon, far quicker than any had expected, a group of ninja landed in front of the group. A group that Hinata recognized. One of them, the Jonin leader of the group, stepped forward. Lord Uzumaki, as captain of Team Guy, it is my task to escort you to meet with Lord Hokage. He said, and Naruto nearly laughed outright at him, only keeping his composure by biting the inside of his mouth. Guy, as he was identified, was a man of height, but his stature was a little off on Naruto's opinion. He wore a bright green spandex suit with orange leg warmers, and sported a ridiculous bowl cut that was so gelled down that it shined like a dome. Behind him was someone that Naruto either took to be his clone, or some relation because the two were almost identical. The other two team members seemed normal, as far as ninja went. One was a girl, dressed in Chinese attire, sporting a massive scroll on her hip, and had her hair done up in cute buns. The third and final member was a Hyuga, resembling Hiyashi. Naruto said, looking back at the man, I didn't know you had a son? The young Hyuga stiffened, glaring at the young blonde. I beg your pardon, but I am not his son. Lord Naruto, this is my nephew, Neji. My brother's son. Hiyashi said, his eyes cast down as if in shame. I believe I told you about them? Naruto, beneath his mask, raised his brow. So this guy has the caged bird seal on him. That must be what I was sensing. He thought, stepping forward. You are one of the branch Hyuga? What if I am? Monster, Neji sneered. Neji, Hiyashi shouted, but it was too late. Naruto was gone in an instant, and, not even having time to activate his Byakugan, Neji was suddenly lifted off his feet and thrown, Naruto appearing right in front of where he stood. Neji found himself plastered against the wall of a building, his eyes wide with shock as his mind caught up with him. He'd been attacked in an instant, with no warning, so fast that he hadn't stood a chance. Guy and the two remaining youngsters were immediately at his throat with kunai in hand. But Naruto didn't budge. How rude, he said, I come here to help your village with a serious problem, and the first thing you do is insult me? Naruto shrugged. This is the boy that you looked as a brother, Hinata? Hinata hurried forward. Don't hurt him. Not to worry, Lady Hinata, Guy said. We shall not let this. Guy never finished, because Hinata stepped into the ring of kunai that now surrounded Naruto, and faced Guy's team. Lady Hinata. Stand down. Naruto snapped his eyes down the street, falling on the white-clad figure with a square-shaped hat atop his head. The old man's wrinkled face brought back fond memories of his short time in the village as he remembered all the times the old man had treated him kindly, and all the time he'd protected him from the villagers' wrath. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third god of ninja, and the third Hokage, had a smile on his face as he faced down the now-adult demon lord, having to look up at him for his height. "You've grown so much, Naruto," he said as he reached them. "You look more and more like your father each day." Naruto smiled and removed his mask. "I don't know how you could tell with this thing on." He grinned. "Steal a Byakugan?" "Hardly," the old man chuckled, as he took in the state of the street. "Tenten, go help Neji out of that hole in the wall. And Guy, you and Lee put those away before I attack you." As Naruto already said, he is here to help, and it was rude of Neji to insult him like that. "I wouldn't be surprised if he has you punished for treating him as such, and for pointing your weapons at his new bride." A thousand apologies, Lord Ho. "Don't apologize to me, you dolt," Hiruzen roared. "Apologize to the man you're threatening." Guy stuttered, but it was Lee that turned to the pair and bowed. "We humbly apologize for our actions, Lord Naruto and Lady Hinata. I would also offer my sincerest apologies to you for my friend's words. Please forgive him," he said, bowing low at the waist. "Any punishment you wish to deal, please exact it on me." Naruto smirked at this, looking across the street where Tenten was helping a dazed Neji to his feet. "Bring Neji over here to me." "And Naruto," Hinata yelped, placing a hand against his chest. Please, don't." Naruto smiled softly at her as he took her hand. "No harm will come to him," he assured her. "It's a present for you." Hinata looked at him confusedly as Tenten slowly moved toward them, fear radiating from her. Naruto knelt down to Neji's level so he could look him in the eye. "Look at me, Neji." Neji did so, not proudly, as blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. "What would happen if the elders found out about your insult to me?" Naruto said. "Answer me truthfully." Neji sighed. "They would have me killed. By using the seal on you?" Naruto asked, to which Neji's head shot up in alarm. "You know?" Neji asked. But Naruto was already reaching out to remove the headband blocking his forehead, revealing the green ink of the seal. Naruto's blue orbs narrowed as he studied the mark. "Disgusting." Naruto sneered, looking over his shoulder at the Hokage. "I've decided their punishment." He made a sign with his hands, then pressed 2 fingers against Neji's mark. Shatter. A flash of blue chakra erupted between the two, and Neji's head exploded in a blinding jolt of pain before he fell back, clutching at his forehead. "Neji!" Tenten screeched, moving to his side, and glared back at Naruto. "What did you do to him?" "A gift to my wife," Naruto said. "I removed the effects of the curse mark on him. See for yourself." He gestured at the recovering Hyuga, who was just sitting up, hand against his brow, moving it away to gaze shock as the green ink went with it. Aye, it's gone." Neji breathed, looking up at the young lord. But why would you?" Naruto jerked his thumb over to Hiashi. "Because of him, and because of Hinata. Both of them hate that mark so much that he was nearly willing to fight his own clan to keep either of his daughters from being sealed." He smiled. "Your insult to me aside, my wish is, for your punishment, is to become my guards on my island." What? Tenten gasped. "You can't." "He can," Hiruzen smirked, "and he's within his rights to claim guards from the village. The only reason I didn't send anyone with him when he left was because no one could be trusted at the time, save for Kakashi, but he's too lazy to even chance sending him," he said, nodding to Guy. "A fitting role, as it happens. Your team will be very good at this assignment." But we," Tenten stuttered. "What about, you will be paid for your time and troubles," Naruto assured, tucking his hands into his sleeves. "And as it happens, I could use your talents. Lord Hiashi has already agreed to help me in my dream of rebuilding my ancestral home," he said, much to their shock, "and since I hope to have ninja in my village, you shall be there to teach them." Neji was speechless. For one thing, his greatest fear, the caged bird seal, was gone. And now he was to be the guard of a demon lord. What sort of madness had he walked into? Naruto smiled as he turned back to the Hokage. "Now, shall we take care of your problem?" The chapter is end here now. We will meet with another chapter, so don't forget to subscribe our channel for more content like this.